unspoiled landscapes, millennia-old sites and monuments, and warm hospitality. Many travelers are simply enchanted by Georgia. The country, which has a population of just under 4 million, is still largely unknown. Yet Georgia scores with a seemingly endless number of cultural highlights such as magnificent churches and monasteries, ancient fortresses and castles, and an ancient rock and cave city. In addition, numerous monuments, museums and galleries introduce tourists to the history of the country. Follow us to the balcony of Europe, to Georgia. If you like this video, please support our channel with a like, comment or subscription. Thank you. In the south of Georgia, on the banks of the Kura River, not far from the town of Akhaltsikhe, the cave town of Vardzia awaits you with more than 700 chambers, rooms, terraces and a cave monastery. You can explore it today through the old tunnels and serpentine paths that are connected with each other. The cave town of Vardzia was built 800 years ago in the 12th century during the reign of King Georgi III. He built Vardzia as a border fortress against the Turks and Persians. When King Georgi III died, he gave his kingdom to his daughter Tamar. She continued the construction, but from that time onwards Vardzia was to serve as a monastery. However, the history of Vardzia begins far before that, because the first mention dates back to the 2nd century BC. In 1283 an earthquake shook Vardzia, and since that time only 750 rooms on an area of about 900 square meters have been preserved, but they are worth visiting. Originally, the cave city of Vardzia consisted of 3,000 dwellings carved into the rock on 7 floors and provided space for about 50,000 people. The ancient mountain town of Mestia is located at an altitude of 1,500 meters in the middle of the Caucasus. The administrative center of the Upper Slonisia region is a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of its fortified towers. Mestia is the starting point for many hiking and trekking trips in the Slonisia region. The defense towers of Mestia stand picturesquely in the Caucasian landscape. Only about 42 of the Slonisian towers have survived time. Of these, some are up to 500 years old. These stone towers, consisting of 3 to 4 stories and 20 to 25 meter high walls, offered the Slonisian extended families protection from their enemies. If all members were in the tower, the ladder was retracted and the attackers were kept at a distance from the embrasures. Up to 80 people could be accommodated in the ladder-connected floors of the Mestia defense towers. Mtshketa is the name given by the Svans to a dwelling at the foot of a defense tower. The port city is very different from the rest of the country, but there are also strong contrasts in Batumi. Batumi is the second largest city in Georgia and the capital of the Republic of Achara. The port city is located on a flat peninsula on the Black Sea coast. Perfect for seaside vacations in Georgia, the city offers many beaches as well as parks, tall skyscrapers and glittering casinos. On the coast of the port city and against the mountain backdrop of the Caucasus is the 7 kilometers long promenade, one of the most beautiful highlights in Batumi. A visit at night makes the walk through dancing fountains, illuminated Ferris wheels and luxurious skyscrapers with Las Vegas atmosphere a great experience. Standing on Europa Square, everything reminds of the ancient history of Georgia. In the center of the square stands the Medea sculpture. The daughter of the king of Caucasus raises the golden raft captured from her father. There are still many ancient buildings such as the Ajara Museum, the synagogue and Soviet-style buildings with old town romance in the historical center of Batumi. With more than 1 million inhabitants, Tbilisi is today the largest city in Georgia and also the capital of the country. Historically, there were probably 2 reasons for founding a city in this place. Firstly, the warm springs that rise in the surrounding mountains made the location appealing. These have been used in spas for centuries. For another, Tbilisi was located at the crossroads of 2 historic caravan routes. In the course of history, the city changed its nationality several times. Thus, Tbilisi repeatedly served as the capital of Georgia, but was also part of the Ottoman Empire and the Soviet Union. These different cultural influences can still be observed in the city today. The biggest attraction of the Georgian capital is the winding Old Town. This was created in its current form at the end of the 18th century when Tbilisi was destroyed for the last time by the military. However, the medieval street and building structure was retained. An excellent view over the entire city can be obtained from the ruins of the Narikala fortress. It is located above the Old Town on the Solalaki Ridge. Originally it was built to protect Tbilisi from the conquest of foreign powers. The old bathing district of Abano-Tubani is also very popular with visitors. Ushguli is one of the most famous places in Savannetia. For several years it has been a trend to make multi-day hikes here from the regional capital Mestia. Consequently, tourism is booming. Parts of Ushguli are included in the UNESCO World Heritage List, among other things, because of its Swanik fortified towers. The defense towers were originally used for defense, as a refuge or as a watchtower. Often several towers stand close to each other, as the individual family groups each had their own tower. Unfortunately, the observance of the monument protection is not controlled by the state. Thus, Ushguli is in danger of losing its historical charm. Many inhabitants are building their houses in a non-historic way because of the growing number of tourists. Nevertheless, this place is still beautiful and you have a breathtaking view of the highest mountain in Georgia, the 5,201 meters high Mtshketa. Also, you can do great hiking from here. Only 150 kilometers and 3 hours away from the capital Tbilisi, there is one of the most spectacular mountain landscapes of all Georgia. We are talking about the breathtaking mountain scenery in Kazbegi, official name Stepantsminda, a small town in the north of Georgia, nestled in the Great Caucasus. The approach to Kazbegi alone is spectacular. It leads along the historic Army Road, the main connecting road between Georgia and Russia, and is a true panoramic road. The highlight of the place, and for many the reason for a side trip to Kazbegi, is the world-famous Gergatia Trinity Church. It is the most photographed church in all of Georgia and is pictured on almost every travel guide. Because it is enthroned in front of the impressive, snow-covered 5,047 meters high Mount Kazbegi and makes a spectacular photo motif. Kakheti, the sunny land in the heart of Georgia, is the center of the millennia-old Georgian wine culture. Here almost all place names are also brand names of a Georgian wine. Every Kakhetian farmer is a vintner and presses his own country wine. Wine is the meaning of life and the elixir of life for the Kakhetians. Even on the grounds of the innumerable churches there are own wine cellars, and in the famous Academy of Akhaltsikhe already in the 12th century besides theology and jurisprudence also viticulture and wine culture were taught. The Kakhetians love to celebrate passionately and extensively. With their imperturbability and incomparable cheerfulness they drink to heaven, peace and long life. For centuries, Kakheti was a powerful kingdom on the Silk Road, whose strategic importance and cultural wealth are evidenced by numerous important churches and massive fortresses from the Middle Ages. Tel Aviv was the royal seat and historical capital. Kutaisi is the second largest city in Georgia, yet much smaller than Tbilisi, which is why it is unfortunately often left out on the itinerary through Georgia. As one of the oldest cities in Europe, A long history goes hand in hand with Kutaisi, from the first settlements in the 6th century BC, as the political center of the Kingdom of Chalkis in the Middle Ages, to its rise as the cultural capital of Georgia and thus a meeting place for musicians, poets, and scholars. Despite the Soviet era, you can still feel the old charm today. Explore the Kutaisi market, visit the Ushguli theater and tour the Baghrati Cathedral, incidentally the best sunset spot in town. Above all, you can use Kutaisi for excursions to the Emirati region, such as the UNESCO-listed Gelati Monastery, the beautifully located Mtshketa Monastery, or the Prometheus Cave. An hour north of Tbilisi you can visit the fortified church of Ananuri, in the green and fertile region of Mtshketa. The picturesque view over the Shinvali Reservoir and the location on the Georgian Army Road was appreciated by traders and soldiers thousands of years ago and eventually even included in the World Heritage List. The fabulous view of Nuri Fortress is also due to the artificial reservoir. A view to the east shows the blue waters of the northern arm of the Shinwali, which is surrounded by forested mountains and is reminiscent of upper Italian lakes. In the 16th century, the construction of the fortified church of Ananuri began in order to secure the embattled Georgian Army Road. Aragvi Eristavi was the name of the noble family that inhabited the castle at that time. Battles and sieges characterized the picture of that time. The imposing buildings of the Ananuri's fortress tell the stories, such as in 1739, when the fortress fell into Persian hands and had to be recaptured. Mtshketa is the former capital of Georgia, with about 7,500 inhabitants. It is the religious center of Georgian Orthodoxy in the country and is located directly on the historical Georgian Army Road. The city of Mtshketa has existed for 3,000 years. At that time it was the most important trade city between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea, directly on the Silk Road. Mtshketa is located in a valley basin in the east of Georgia and north of Tbilisi. The Kura and Aragvi rivers converge at this point. The Svetishofeli Cathedral in the city center and was included in the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1996. The cathedral is the seat of the Archbishop of Mtshketa and Tbilisi. It was built between 1010 and 1029 AD and is the second largest Georgian church, after the Holy Trinity Cathedral in Tbilisi. The Chvari Monastery, Monastery of the Cross, offers a good view of the city of Mtshketa due to its high location. The monastery is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, as is the Santavro Women's Monastery. The fortress and cave town Uplistsikhe is located on the rocky plateau on the Kura River and about 80 kilometers from the Tbilisi. Uplistsikhe translates as Fortress of God and was first mentioned in writing in the 1st century. However, the rock plateau was inhabited by people as early as the Bronze Age, but the cave city of Uplistsikhe was established in the 6th century BC. The rock city developed into a trade center on the Silk Road and had about 5,000 inhabitants. A 10th century basilica is perched on top of the plateau, and the cave city had a 40-meter-long tunnel leading to the water. Attempts to conquer Uplistsikhe failed again and again, and it was not until the 13th century that the Mongols succeeded in capturing and destroying it. After the fall of the Byzantine Empire in 1453, there were no more trade relations with Western Europe, and Uplistsikhe lost its strategic importance on the Silk Road. The last inhabitants left the cave town at the end of the 18th century. Untouched Tusheti is a region of the Great Caucasus with seductive beauty, crystal-clear waters, rugged rocks and dense forests. Today, Tusheti administratively belongs to the region of Kakheti, a paradise for hikers, trekkers and evening adventurers. In the homeland of the companionable Tush people, life is still lived as it was hundreds of years ago. Most of them are shepherds with their sheep and famous for the high-quality production of Tuscan cheese and wool. Of the total of 10, almost forgotten mountain villages, Omalo is the administrative center, the largest settlement and a good starting point for extensive hikes on rarely traveled trails. The only road connecting Tusheti with the rest of Georgia is the Tusheti Road and arrives in Omalo. The adventurous way to the settlement is not for visitors sensitive to heights but compensates for any hardships with its idyllic characteristic of rickety fortified towers, green hills and houses built of flat stones. Dashbashi Canyon is located in the Kwemo-Kartli region in the gorge of the Krami River, near the village of Dashbashi, at 1110 to 1448 meters above sea level. It is a rare gorge characterized by biodiversity. Dashbashi waterfall, hidden in the greenery, attracts many visitors with its perfect atmosphere, like a paradise beauty. The most famous place in Dashbashi Canyon is the biggest waterfall. But the canyon is 8 kilometers long and you can discover many more interesting and beautiful places if you are an adventurer and not afraid of the relief. The nature and the picturesque waterfalls on the steep slopes of the gorge create a completely different micro-landscape. In the Krami Valley you can discover natural and artificial caves. Since 2022, you can also cross a 240-meter-long glass bridge that hangs over the gorge and offers sweeping views of majestic waterfalls and caves. There is also a zip line at this structure where you can cycle or swing across the gorge for an additional fee. At first glance, it looks out of place. Amid rolling hills and lush pine forests, a bare limestone monolith rises vertically into the air. Located in the remote region of Imarisha in Georgia, the massive pillar looks as if a giant arbitrarily stuck it into the ground. In reality, of course, the rock tower was not created by a mythical creature, but by erosion, which removed the surrounding rock. The church at the top of the column, on the other hand, is man-made. As early as the 8th century, the church on the top of the column is said to have been built. Historians are still not sure how the monks got to the top back then, let alone carried the building materials for a church to the top. This is because the path leads almost vertically over nearly 40 meters of uneven stone. Monks used the high cliff for centuries to be closer to heaven and to pray there. Many of them even lived permanently in the airy heights before the temple on the Katskhi column was abandoned in the 15th century. Akhaltsikhe is a Georgian town in the south of Georgia with about 18,000 inhabitants. The first written mentions of the city date back to the 12th century. Geographically, the city is located at an altitude of 1,029 meters above sea level. The city in the south of Georgia is characterized by its location close to the border with Turkey and by a large proportion of Armenian inhabitants in the population, a typical fact for the entire region in South Georgia. In its history, Akhaltsikhe has changed rulers several times. From the 13th to the 16th century, the town was ruled by a Georgian noble family. Later it was ruled by the Ottomans. Russian troops drove out the Turkish occupiers in 1828. Thus, the rule changed to the Russian Tsarist Empire. A tourist feature of Akhaltsikhe is the Rabati fortress. The fortress was renovated in 2010 and 2011 and is an absolutely tourist highlight in Georgia.